Let's go straight to MediaWatch with Emma James. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Reactions online and elsewhere to the latest elections here in France?
Yes, exactly. It's not really a shock because we knew it was coming, especially after the results of the first round, but certainly Emmanuel Macron has pulled off something of a political coup. Lots of the cartoonists enjoying themselves, imagining the scene here with Emmanuel Macron. This is by the cartoonist Placide. He's changing the face of the Assemblée Nationale by recarving the etching on the front, and it now says Assemblée Macronale. I'm not sure if you can see that. There we go. The Assemblée Macronale, as created by Placide there. Another cartoonist here has come up with this perhaps slightly less positive, you might imagine. Emmanuel Macron portrayed as a peacock, and of course the results fanning out behind him, slightly exaggerating, I think, how well the République En Marche did, but not too far wide of the mark. Another article that's particularly interesting is one in Time magazine, written by Vivian Walt, who is a regular here on France 24. She says he has built a revolution on hope, now he has to face reality. When you look at this article, in the first paragraph alone, she uses the words astonishing, crushing, gigantic, stunning. She's really hammering home just how big a deal this is for France, and how much of a change as well in the political kind of way of speaking about these kind of things. She also says that there's one other thing that has surprised French pollsters in particular, and that is the level of optimism in France. She says in a country famous for its public grouching, political observers say they're amazed to see that the country is in the grip of hope rather than anger. But of course, we're going to have to wait and see whether that holds, dependent on what Emmanuel Macron can actually achieve. There were some who were disappointed with the scale of his win because there was talk that it could have been even bigger. The Economist says it was a landslide, not an avalanche. And what they go on to say is that really it's a measure of how quickly the expectations have changed, that some saw this final result in some ways as being disappointing. The other major disappointment was the lack of really commitment to voting, a record low in terms of people not turning out, the abstention rate very, very high indeed. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the far left contender for the presidency, who won a lot of support during that campaign, has particularly talked about abstention, saying really it rules out the legitimacy of Emmanuel Macron's strength of government. What he says, in very French terms, he says that the failure to turn out to vote basically amounts to a general strike against the new president. Now, he's pledging to mobilise people against Emmanuel Macron, tweeting this a little under an hour after those polls closed, saying that from now on the strength of the abstention must become the force of the citizens' revolution. So he has big plans. However, a lot of people on social media pointing out that Jean-Luc Mélenchon himself actually was elected in an area where there was a very high abstention rate. This Twitter user saying not legitimate and he should stand down. A little tongue-in-cheek there, but you live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Indeed, indeed. Now, let's move on to London, where there's been yet another terror attack. This time the target different, a group of Muslim worshippers, some pointing the finger of blame at the right-wing media.
Yes, absolutely. We don't yet know the full motivation for this act by this man. What we do know from witnesses is that he apparently said he wanted to kill all Muslims. Now, what does tend to happen when there's a terror attack carried out by an Islamic extremist is that people say, how were they radicalised? We must look at the causes of all this. Now, some people on social media are pointing the finger of blame at right-wing media in the United Kingdom, which does tend to take some very, very strong stances and upsets a lot of people with its headlines. This, a whole mishmash of The Sun, The Express, the Daily Mail, and the kind of rhetoric that they use that upsets a lot of people. This Twitter user saying, we need to address the reasons why the Finsbury Park terrorist was radicalised. This Twitter user too responding to that, saying that the UK papers morph into extremist pamphlets. It is time for self-reflection. James O'Brien, a radio host, is pointing out that just a couple of weeks ago, The Sun had a headline stating, "We need less Islam. A fool could see some might take it literally." J.K. Rowling, the author too, she's pointing the finger in a slightly different direction. She's actually looking at the former UKIP leader, Nigel Farage, and he actually tweeted this in the wake of the attack. This awful attack in Finsbury Park could only make things worse, but she's actually putting it alongside this poster from during his election campaign, where he was insinuating that these people were queuing, migrants queuing to get into the United Kingdom, and it wasn't even a photograph taken anywhere near the UK or even en route to the UK. So a lot of very different views being expressed online. Another person who has attracted a lot of criticism and has engendered a lot of anger is this gentleman, Tommy Robinson. He is the founder of the English Defence League, which is a very far-right protest group that have on occasions actually been banned from protest marches, from carrying out their marches in the UK because they're deemed to be just too troublesome. Now, what people are saying about him is that he should be deemed to be a hate preacher. The police aren't yet investigating him. They say they haven't had a formal complaint, but if they do receive one, then he will be investigated. The reason for all the anger is that he tweeted immediately after the attack that this mosque, the Finsbury Park Mosque, had created terrorists. And of course, Finsbury Park Mosque used to be synonymous with extremism, but a lot has changed since then. This independent article talking about the fact that it's changed since 2004, when Abu Hamza, the noted hate preacher with the hook for a hand, where he was arrested in 2004, finally deported from the UK. And what they say is that his arrest basically allowed the Muslim community to take back their mosque. People on Twitter drawing similar comparisons like this one to extremists. Neither of them commit acts of violence themselves, but feed a narrative to their minions that can then carry them out.
Emma James, thank you very much indeed for that Media Watch. Great to see you.